Hello, feeB here to say, my mic was turned off in OBS for the first couple minutes of this, and then I turn it up and it's loud, and then I turn it down and it's really quiet. I am sorry for that.
This
It's the
is,
seventh month, so
well, no, this is number 7, but still June's book.
June was a busy month for
Yeah.
everyone.
Word up.
Bird Up, it's the best show on television.
Hello, feeB.
feeB is my favorite host.
Oh,
I take that, Ryan. You were saying? Sorry, I kind of cut you off there.
poor Ryan.
Nah, this you know what he did, the elephantitis incident. Is if it's covered by healthcare or not? It's not a pre-existing. You have a good point. But yeah, this month's books was Star Wars Death Star and anthology, omnibus, whatever you want to call it,
It's not
centered
really,
around. Or good.
it's not really an anthology because it's different parts of one story that all come together at some point.
Yeah, but
It's like
it's
a
like also multiple different story and storylines that happen to converge at one point.
it's like a split narrative, but you're looking at a tree backwards.
That's a good way to put it. Because I was counting before you got here, Jordy, and there's 13 individual main characters. 9 if you disinclude ones we're already familiar with, like Vader or Tarkin.
Tarkin, yeah.
Nice.
And some of those still aren't original characters because there's, like in New Hope, there's the guy that pulls the lever for the Death Star, one of the guys who presses the buttons to fire it, and I think even the guy who gets choked out at the very beginning by Vader is in the book.
Yep, it is. I'm on the wiki because there's a million characters and keeping them all
Yeah.
straight is a nightmare. Conan Antonio Motti,
Yeah, Muddy.
who is, fun fact, his name was actually christened by George Lucas, giving Conan O'Brien a reference in
Yeah,
Star
it's
Wars.
not surprising.
Mm.
Because originally he was only referred to as his nickname Z.
It's like Obi-Wan's home planet is named after the other late night host to dude. Stu John, that's the name of the planet, because John Stewart. But
God, I hate Star Wars.
yeah, it's pretty
I
dumb.
was about to say, like, why late night show host?
Because they're fucking
George Lucas is
nerds.
a madman.
That too.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. That's
But yeah, this to kind of give a brief summary of this book, it is basically like 13 different perspectives of the events leading up to and shortly after the destruction of the first Death Star. And I really fucking love it. I think the amount of the amount of viewpoints gets very confusing very fast. Like I literally was late to when we were supposed to meet up because I had to reread the fucking bios of everyone to remember who was who.
Yeah, I only remember like 3 characters, and that's because I just like them better.
But it's really interesting because it shows like rebels, independent, and imperial forces. Kind of like the thoughts on it, and like especially their thoughts on the initial firing of the Death Star. And like one of my favorite sections of the story is the gentleman who fired the Death Star, Ten Granite. He was like he was cool too because it's like I guess I'll start a little bit further back before I move up to this point. But I like one of the reasons I do like this book is because of how much it expands like the day-to-day lore of life in the Imperial era, especially for those like serving on an Imperial like installation. Because there was a lot. It's I saw someone refer to it as a Death Star as a slice of life anime or Star Wars, and I kind of agree with that.
Yeah,
I can see that.
until the very end, and even then,
Yeah.
it's sometimes split up between, oh shit, it's Darth Vader. He's doing Darth Vader shit.
And then other times it's a dude hitting on a Twi'lek bartender.
Oh, I fucking love the Twi'lek bartender lady. She's so cool.
What's her name?
It's like,
Miha Ruthis.
yeah.
Ruthis.
I genuinely forget because again, there's 13 characters all giving their perspectives.
Well, it's not to include the minor characters. Those are only the main characters.
Yeah.
If you wanna go to the wiki, the other characters list is like 2-3 pages worth of names.
Good God.
Which I'm gonna give my like big criticism to this book at the beginning, just because we're already on the topic. Is like, yes, it is cool to see a lot of different opinions and perspectives on the Death Star. I did not need 13 in one book.
Yeah, it's a bit much. In like, I think the first time I tried reading it, I like had a notepad somewhere of what the characters were and what they do, just so I remembered when it switches narratives that oh, it's from this guy's perspective.
Because there's the librarian, the smuggler, the imperial officer, the other imperial officer, Dala, who is actually who becomes a big deal in the First Order.
Oh yeah, the pilot, the medic, the prisoner, the other prisoner, and then the architect prisoner.
And then there's the guard, the sergeant who was force sensitive.
Oh yeah, the guy who fired the gun, the guy under him who fires the gun, the Death Star.
So yeah, it's
And
complex.
I'll take this opportunity to say to admit my faults that I couldn't even get very far into this at all. Like I told you guys, I just got 30 pages into it, and that was probably the main thing that was holding me back from from wanting to keep reading this. So I did genuinely try. The 30 pages was hard fought, but it was kind of frustrating because, I read a chapter and it was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. And then the next chapter was a completely different person and they don't like introduce them quickly. They take a bit
It
to get to who the chapter is.
yeah
So then I'm confused for a bit, going back and forth, and then I'm still doing that like 6 chapters in, and it's frustrating, and also I don't think the chapters were long enough for me to like really feel like I knew like I think a couple of the chapters were better than others. Like the first 2 chapters were really solid, where it's the pilot in the first one, and then the second one's Tarkin. But then we get to like I think it's Tila. I was like, why does she have a chapter this early? I don't know anything about Tila. I just know
Yeah,
her name now.
they kind of just drop Tila in and then don't elaborate until way later on why she's important.
Yeah, I could do without it. And like the whole time I was like reading this, trying to read it, I was kind of reminded of so like another book that does something similar would be like Game of Thrones, where and I was thinking of like, well, I could read Game of Thrones just fine. Why can't I read this? And at least like in Game of Thrones, the chapters, I think it's so petty and but the Game of Thrones chapters, they aren't numbered. The Game of Thrones chapters are named. It's the character's name who you're reading from. I think one change and I probably would have been at least a little bit more receptive. Um and also they just kind of the chapters are longer. It spends more time with them. I like when
yeah
you're it's one thing when you're reading a Ned Stark chapter at the end of Game of Thrones, but when you're starting the book and it's a Ned Stark chapter, and at least if it's like 10, 15 pages, I get more of a feel for the character. Most of these I just didn't feel like I feel like I was getting names thrown at me instead of like actually learning anything. There's
Yeah.
my soapbox.
I think that's definitely it. It's like I'm a Star Wars dweeb, so I had some passing familiarity with a few of these characters just from being said Star Wars nerd. But if you had gone in blind, not knowing who Nova still was, it's like fucking impossible to differentiate a lot of the Imperial characters too.
Yeah.
And that's where I have to admit my other fault is that like I don't hate Star Wars, but I didn't grow up with it and I really only watched the movies once. Not even the sequel trilogy, just the prequels and the original trilogy.
Really?
Yeah,
Yep.
I
Like that.
yeah. I didn't hate it, which isn't like a glaring compliment either.
Yeah, especially for the prequels. Uh, But
Yeah.
I think part of the problem with the pacing is because it is such a short book, they have to throw characters in and explain stuff and then go along. Because, like, you look at the book and it says, oh, it's like 500 pages long. But 200 of those pages is like two chapters from completely different Star Wars books just to, like, advertise them. So
Mhm.
it's really, like, I think 380 pages, 385?
84 apparently,
84.
according to the wiki.
Ooh, one off. Let's go.
Which, for reference, Dune page count. Dune is 412 pages.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or Lonesome Dove, if you're more of a Western fan, is 843. So to kind of give you a reference on how long this book is, and there's a lot of ground to cover, even despite like splitting it up between 13 different perspectives.
Yeah.
So it's definitely it's I kind of do want to start with it because I do have a lot of positive things to say about this book, but the decision to make 13 different protagonists or points of view was not a great one. It makes it really hard for like the casual reader to get into it.
Yeah, and it's weird because the two writers for this, Michael Reeves and what's the name of the other guy?
Steve
John
Perry.
Steve
Steve
Perry.
Perry.
Yeah.
Whoops.
I got it pulled up here, but they've both written for the Batman animated series, and Steve Perry has even written like, well, they both written other Star Wars books, but Steve Perry's written like Shadows of the Empire, which is one of the best Star Wars books.
Hmm. And should have absolutely been the sequel trilogy. Fight me, anyone.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the other books in here, yeah, the introduction to the Rebellion era or whatever. No, New Republic era. It follows Luke and his wife, the what's her name, Mara Jade.
Hmm.
But yeah, anyway.
Mara Jade be like Queen. That's a discussion for a different podcast.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the book. I do, again, as a Star Wars nerd, I love all the like little sayings and colloquialisms they put in there. Like I have one highlighted, which is my favorite, with the Kark. Like it's just dumb. That's Star Wars.
I don't remember the exact thing, but there's also another one that the pilot uses. It's like faster than a neutrino through a bunker site, or something equally incomprehensible as that. But it's through a hot knife through butter.
Yeah, but it's just
So it's like, does Star
sci-fi.
Wars not have butter?
I mean, why would they? Do they have cows?
They've got
I
green
not in
milk.
this. They have milk.
Green milk.
They
Yeah, Luke drinks it in like the first movie. I mean, it's not. I don't think they call it green milk, but
For all intents and purposes, it is a lactate-based substance or a
yeah,
lactate-based drink.
he in what is it? The Last Jedi or whatever. There's just like a couple seconds scene where he milks some fucking sci-fi creature and drinks straight from the like cup of the milk, and he's like, ah. It's just fucking. It's weird.
But diving away from that before this, like every other uh, talk on Star Wars ends up being ragging on the new series.
Yeah, again.
But yeah, I think a lot of like when I mentioned this being a slice of life book, that's I think some of my favorite Star Wars works aside from like Heir to the Empire and Shadow of the Empire trilogies is the stuff that just kind of is like a day in the life of people in Star Wars. Because it's interesting to see because Star Wars is a very concise and very to the point movie. You don't really see a lot aside from what's like what the rebels are doing. Like there's no cuts of just a dude living his life or going day to day. It's always like these very
Yeah.
fantastical characters living out these fantasy adventures. So seeing a dude literally just sit there and chronicle events for a couple hours is interesting. Like it's not the most exciting, but I think it's cool to see like a day in the life of just an average dude. I mean, there's a scene literally where the female admiral is doing paperwork. Like that's the
Yeah.
chapter is her doing paperwork and monologuing.
Or like Tarkin having to organize just a bunch of stuff, and it's like, yeah, a bomb may have gone off, but it feels like somebody's like poked him in the arm or something. He's just slightly annoyed, and he just goes on doing other stuff.
Which is a great Tarkin moment because it's like literally is like, oh no. Anyway,
Yeah.
but and yeah, seeing a lot of the scenes in the bar where a lot of the characters are just interacting with each other in the frame of Star Wars is cool too. Because it's like it's certain parts of the books are very low stakes. Like it's literally just like kind of fleshing out the characters and the Death Star itself. Is it's nice to see, especially in Star Wars. There's also times where it felt more like an episode of Star Trek, specifically with the neutral group, we'll call them, the group that wasn't like really pro rebel or Empire, because they would literally like it felt like any episode that starts with them in the bar and the Next Generation.
Oh yeah, 10 forward or whatever.
So where they're literally just talking about an issue they have that's not even relevant to the plot, and then just kind of like asking advice on how to handle it, and it feels very real, which is not something I very often use for Star Wars works,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool. It's nice to have those like quiet moments, especially because like the Death Star itself is such a like big event, like it's the event that kicks off the original trilogy.
Yeah, and like there is one chapter where when it finally starts combining in like the middle, where the pilot's going and he's like almost having a breakdown because he's like, okay, this is a real thing. We're gonna start like killing people. And like, there's the Lucre Hulk, the big space ball with the ring on it from the Clone Wars, just flooding out X-wings, and they're like, "Oh God, what do we do? We're gonna fucking die here." And then Tarkin is just like, 4% power, blast it, and they're like, "Okay." And with just 4% of the Death Star blasting at it, it's just gone. Not even like an explosion. It's just gone.
Literally vaporized.
Yeah. So then, like, all right, now mop up the X-wings, and then later the pilot, Vildance, that's his name, essentially just starts getting PTSD and like nightmares about seeing bodies just floating out in space.
A fun fact: Vill's full name is Villain Dance.
It's Villain Dance.
That's pretty.
Oh,
That
That's
is
pretty
not a joke.
metal.
yeah. I knew Jordy would like that character, but
Oh,
that would
dude,
require
Vil
Jordy
is
reading the book. So
Yeah,
get
look,
on, get
look,
on.
look. No, I recognize that. I'm gonna finish the book someday. It's gonna take me like 2 years at this rate.
Yeah.
But I also say Vil is easily my favorite character in the book.
Yeah, they for
I
sure.
shockingly guy who loves sci-fi fighter sims likes the pilot character.
Yeah, but also I think that's because in the early book he gets the most like writing time. Like he has the most chapters, doesn't he?
I want to say him and the smuggler have a lot of take up a lot of screen time relatively.
Yeah.
What's the do? Core? No, it's the surgeon.
Is it the plant guy?
Celiot Ratu Dil.
Oh yeah, right.
Ratua Dil. Because him. Or go on.
He's neat just because he's like, I thought he was force sensitive because he's like, oh, he's faster than a normal person, but he's just kind of a plant dude.
According to the wiki, he is apparently confirmed to be force sensitive, though.
Oh, well, okay, I'm wrong then.
And he was a cool character too. I think his romance with Mia was good too. It felt very organic and very natural how they kind of interacted. And like for being like a smuggler who was sentenced to work in a prison colony till he died, he's like very chill about everything. Like he's not very bothered by the bigger events.
Yeah, but I think that's just because
I mean, up until the destruction. What?
I was gonna use the Jango Fett quote. He's just a man trying to make his way in the galaxy.
Never change prequel. There's so many good. There's so many good like one-liners in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll say that's that's another complaint I have. There wasn't really any good one-liners in this. I was distinct lack of good one-liners.
Which I think makes sense because again, they're just like living out their day-to-day lives. They're not a lot of them are action heroes. Like I am sad Vil Dance didn't say any of them because he is an ace pilot, but
He's a double ace. He has 10 kills.
excuse me, double ace. Yeah. I also because of that read him or read his voice in my head was not Tom Hanks the entire time.
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise. Yeah.
Just Top Gun. Yeah. But yeah, those were definitely good things, and I think a lot of the smaller stories too, like Nova Still, the guard who after a lot of the like big conflict doesn't take place till the first time they fire it on Alderaan. And that's when a lot of the like big narrative shifts and all of the storylines start moving into the events that would both lead to the leaking of the Death Star plans to the Rebel Alliance, and B, allow the heroes to get in and out of the Death Star, destroying it. Because I want to say Ritten is the reason why they managed to escape the first time, because he's the one who turned off the tractor beam.
Yeah, and
because he was like,
sorry.
Go ahead.
And like they get the plans out, but it's fucking devastating what happens at the end to all of them. I was just kind of like annoyed by it, but it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 5 of the what is it? The defectors were a crew of 9, 8, and 4 of them die in the final escape.
Yeah.
Trying to like hold off the Imperials.
Well, not only that. Oh wait, can we do spoilers of the book? Because this is at like the very end.
Yeah, we'll consider if you want to jump out real quick, Jordy. We'll talk about the spoilers real quick, even though I kind of already mentioned one.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Go roll with it. It's okay. I mean, the Death Star blows up, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Is, like, you obviously know it's gonna end with that being the title, but it's still they somehow make it work. Like they make it surprising and like because of all the different characters, you feel bad about it because of the. But anyway.
Mm-hmm. Like one of the characters, the dude who was firing the Death Star laser, Tin Granat, actually held off on firing on Yavin 4. He was given the order, but he told his troops to belay it like 4 times, giving them Luke enough time to destroy it. And then and a group of them defected. Like I think it was all the prisoners, the librarian, and the sergeant, pardon me, ended up defecting. And the sergeant and the bouncer, who is actually not a huge character, he's just kind of in the background of a lot of the bar scenes, stay behind to fight the Imperials as they're escaping in the final fight. And so it's like, shockingly, in an event that causes massive loss of Imperial life, most of the named characters die.
Yeah.
And I think it's like 5 of them make it out on a shuttle.
Well, I was trying to talk about the shuttle because this is where the big spoilers come in as well, Jordan. So they're trying to leave, but they get caught in the tractor beam, and the Death Star's about to blow up, but they don't know that. So they're stuck in the tractor beam, and they all decide they'd rather commit suicide and blow up the ship than be captured and executed.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's brutal. You also
But yeah, it's
sorry.
go ahead.
You also do get Vader's perspective of him spinning around in space and catching a glimpse of the Millennium Falcon, which in Star Wars is like, imagine you're in like an F-14 fighter jet, you're about to kill somebody, and some fucking like Cessna flies in and shoots you.
Safe to say that Vader was seething, coping,
Cope.
maimed.
Copium.
He was so upset. Like, genuinely, Vader, I'll argue, is one of the best star pilots in the entire franchise.
They literally talk about that. Yeah, where like the best pilot the Empire ever had, he's fucking plays with him.
They have a training match between DeVille and Vader, and Vader, like, halfway through, stops trying and still fucking flexes on him.
Not Vil, but the trainer.
Oh, was it not Vil?
No, it was the trainer teacher dude at the academy. Vil got like taken out just before, and he watches, and it's like, yeah, they're neck and neck, but it's very clear Vader's just having fun, like a kiddie play match. And then once Vader lands and leaves, the mechanic says all the targeting computers were turned off before Vader launched the ship. So like, not only did he beat the top pilot there, he did it on manual in a fucking starfighter.
And for reference, starfighters or TIE fighters are like literally flying coffins. They are stripped away of everything but the bare minimum you need to be an efficient fighter. Which is like a really good engine and really strong turbo lasers. That's it.
Yep.
I see.
So yeah, it's anytime I pretty much I don't know a single time the writers have fucked up Vader, and I'm happy for that.
Yeah, Vader or Tarkin.
Tarkin's bits were really good too, because like everything was going wrong. Everyone was like going to shit, and he was completely bothered by it. He was like, I bet. Well, it's cool. We'll kill him next time. Which it also reminds me of the scene in the TV show Rebels, where the first big bad is like these two Imperial officers, and they keep failing. So Tarkin shows up with an Inquisitor, and he's like, "Okay, you guys have not done your job. This is going in your performance. This is going in your performance review." As he has the Inquisitor cut their heads off in front of another officer he was entrusting with the hunt for the rebels.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, go ahead.
And despite how terrifying Tarkin was in that, when Thrawn shows up, that's when it also gets scarier.
Oh god, Thrawn. We should convince Ryan to let us do Thrawn next year.
We should.
Thrawn is a bad motherfucker, and he's like also not air quotes an Imperial as much as he's using the Imperials to further his own goals.
Yeah.
But that is again a topic for a different podcast. I don't know. This book is kind of hard to review because of how big it is. Like, there's a lot I want to say about the smaller stories, but we would be here for like another 3 hours if I did that.
Yeah.
So I guess if you want to give final thoughts.
I guess I'll ask like a more pointed question.
Yes.
Like your criticism and mine I think are pretty big criticisms. I think that's something like it definitely kept me away from the book. And I consider myself pretty good at reading just about anything. So I mean, like putting like your criticism with your what's the word, with your compliments, like what would you rate this book personally?
I'll let you go first, feeB, because I have a complicated answer.
Me too. I really like it. It is hard to get into because of how many perspectives there is. So I'd give it like a good 7. 7 out of 10.
Interesting.
I'd agree with that. Mine is, I have to preface it with, I'm a fucking Star Wars nerd. I love Star Wars. I put up with a lot of Star Wars shit because of how much I love Star Wars. I fucking hate Star Wars. That's how much I love it. This is a book I can't recommend like someone who isn't as into Star Wars as me to read as much as I do like it. And so I feel like a 7 is a pretty I agree with a 7.
So yeah, you wouldn't even try to give it to someone who's like kind of okay with Star Wars.
No.
They've seen the movies more than once.
No, not even close.
Gotcha. That's interesting. So I was just kind of looking around to see what other people were saying about the book. And I found this one of someone that reviewed it on their really old website in 2008. And for context, the book was published in 2007. And they gave it a 2.5 stars out of 5. So, 5 out of 10, basically.
What was the reasoning, if you recall?
Well, let me pretty much kind of what we said before, that there's a lot of characters and a lot of perspectives. They said that pretty much none of the characters were extremely interesting.
I would disagree with that.
It says Reeves and Perry give us all of these new characters to get involved with, anchoring them with the viewpoints of Tarkin and Vader as well, but they fail to make the new characters very interesting.
I will say, also, this is 2008, so the landscape of Star Wars was very different at that era too.
True.
I know it's easy to just drum beat and say a new Star Wars bad, but like I was more invested in Vil and A Toro Written than I was for the majority of the sequel trilogy.
That's fair. I think probably a lot of people would agree with you too. I mean, like,
I guess it's like the positives of hindsight. It's like we've seen how much worse it can get, so this doesn't seem as bad in comparison. Because at least, I guess, with the essence of it being the Death Star, an event we already know very well, like it's interesting to see the like kind of perspectives and like the different things that happen. Where in the sequel trilogy, I just like could not find myself to give a fuck about the plot lines.
Yeah.
They're also not afraid to like do things in this book, whereas The Last Jedi and so on was. Finn should have been a Jedi. I will just say that.
Finn should have been the main character. Like, what's her name? Rey. She could still be force sensitive and do stuff, and that's cool. But they fucked Finn. They fucked him over so hard.
Having a stormtrooper become a Jedi is like that's such a cool story beat.
It is, and don't they end up in he's just kind of there by the end of it?
The last movie he spends almost exclusively chasing for Rey.
That's ugh.
Yeah.
Icky.
And so I think, well, I imagine that review is pretty fair for the year. It's like we Star Wars fans did not know how good we had it. Oh yeah, I guess this book is technically non-canon now because it's Legends.
A lot of stuff is Legends now.
But also, so by 2008, hadn't the prequels all come out?
Yes.
Yeah.
When was Revenge of the Sith? 2005.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because I feel like people still kind of criticize the prequels pretty hard, which I think's interesting because I liked them. I'll say it.
Yeah, but compared to the sequels, objectively they are kind of worse. But they're just more enjoyable because of the like crappy, clunky, campy dialogue. Like the prequels are like some of the most quoted movies today. And that's because of all like the good one-liners. Like, I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the galaxy. Or the I hate sand speech. Whereas the sequels are somewhat competently made. Like, they look cool, but the writing's just boring and it's soulless. You can feel Disney wanted to make it just to make more money, which I mean it did, and like the writing was probably dumbed down more for like other countries and stuff to translate it well, which like that's nothing on the countries, that's on the company making writing more lame. Like that's the word I have for it. It's just
Yeah.
lame. And like if you like them, cool, I guess, good for you. I will say The Last Jedi. Oh yeah, we're back to dunking on the sequels again. Sorry, but
Go
Ryan,
ahead.
We can run this real quick. I think this is relevant for this topic at least.
yeah, Ryan Johnson is a good director. Like I like his Breaking Bad episodes, and this like cinematography of the sequels are cool. Like a lot of it is just CGI, which, by the way, J.J. Abrams wanted to get away from the prequels and he wanted to use more special effects, but ended up having more CG shots in that than all other previous Star Wars movies. That's just neither here nor there. But the shot of like the little speeder things on the lake bed that's all white, and then the like bright red coming up as they go along. It's really beautiful. It's pretty.
I don't think anyone would say that the sequel trilogy at least doesn't look phenomenal.
Yeah, but then you like completely mess up Luke's character. Like the character who gave Darth Vader the most vile man in the universe who has done nothing but basically hunt and kill people for fun for the past 18 years. He gave him absolution. He redeemed Darth Vader and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to kill my nephew because a little twinge in my brain is like, maybe he's not good after all." Like, okay, it might as well be an alternate universe because that's not Luke Skywalker.
I mean,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, it might as well just be an alternate universe for how few people I've heard compliment it.
It's especially like I'm super familiar with Legends. I love Legends. I read a lot of the Star Wars books growing up. It's like a lot of those books are objectively bad, but at
Yeah,
least they gave a shit.
at least they tried. Yeah.
It's like you get the weird. One of my favorite books. I don't remember the name of the book, but it was basically Luke went to this planet to go kill this Imperial officer, but he went undercover, and then like a bunch of like really wacky out of character stuff starts happening, and it's kind of like this is weird. I don't really know where this is going. Until the end of it, it reveals that Luke is telling his story to telling the story to a reporter, and the reporter is embellishing it for the story.
Oh.
And it's a really fun twist to let them kind of play around with some of the more fantastical elements. Like the dude has a vibro long sword and a vibro like kite shield,
That's
and
sick.
he's fighting Luke, and Luke's like it literally like hard cuts in the middle of the fight, and like Luke is like it didn't happen like that. He didn't have those. And then the reporter's like, yeah, but it'll sell. And
That's
so
sorry.
I think that's the core of Star Wars to me. It's embracing the silliness while still having like a pretty strong core narrative and kind of like core identity.
Yeah, but that's kind of the thing for me is like so a lot of people who say they want a different Star Wars will like show you a picture of like a fan edit of Obi-Wan but like using the force to lift up 20 blasters and all shoot stormtroopers, and it's like that's not Star Wars. That's just you want something really cool that happens to be Star Wars, whereas I want more things that are like almost grounded in reality but not, because they are supposed to be like the Greek myths. Like Star Wars is just the hero's journey.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It is literally like I my parents got me a book on the hero's journey just as a gift one year, and it's like beat Star Wars is literally just beat for beat the hero's journey, zero deviation. Like it's actually kind of funny how simple it is.
Yeah.
You were saying, Jordy? I kind of cut you off.
Well, I was just gonna say that sounded very profound what both of you just said, and I'm gonna co-sign it. I'm pretty out of my depth with anything Star Wars, so that's the
Yes,
best I can add.
yeah, just
okay. Actually, that's as someone who's not super familiar with Star Wars, like give us kind of your thoughts on what we just said. Like how what does that invoke with you?
I think that let me try to I think it's interesting like you're talking about how at the base it is just a hero's journey. Like yeah, and that's I think sometimes when people kind of look at that and they're like, "Oh, this is just the hero's journey." Like that's not the point entirely. That is a frame for your photograph. That is not the main issue. Like trying to how to say this. I think sometimes kind of say that with a with criticism. I've seen that before at least. And it's the parts of the story that you need to focus on and like love are what like the other stuff you guys are talking about. Like, you know, the first movie's kind of silly. There's silly stuff going on. It makes it feel more human, especially when it's still so serious. I don't know. I think that not very much other media kind of hits that nice little sweet spot between like there are silly stuff happening in the background of this very serious issue, but I think that's what that I mean that's clearly what makes people love it the most.
And yeah, that's another thing about Star Wars is it was one of the first movies to really follow the comic relief for a while. Like it's the first 10 minutes is just following like C-3PO and R2-D2 as they like get picked up by Luke, who's just some backwater planet moisture farmer.
Quite literally, just some fucking dude,
It's the guy, but it's the guy.
Yeah, yeah,
Mister
it's
Guy.
the guy. The hero gets called to adventure because some little droid decides to run off into the desert.
But yeah, to kind of bring it back around to the original point, I think that this book, the reason why I do like it and stuff like it, is that it follows that formula. It has a very like serious, concise narrative it's telling, but it's not afraid to kind of like deviate and focus on some of the, like these side stuff and have some like moments of levity.
Yeah, and like with all the talk about writing, it does Star Wars good. Like it is like just some pilot, and then it'll cut to Darth Vader doing Darth Vader stuff, and it feels like that fits in the narrative.
Ah, yes, this would have absolutely been a or a fade cut.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think that's kind of sums up all my thoughts on it. I don't really have anything else to add. Um, either one of you wants to add anything or has anything else you would like to ask or bring up though?
I think you've got it covered for now. Otherwise, I think anything else would I can think of would inspire uh having to marathon all the movies right now.
we can do
You
that.
wanna
I don't have time.
I
call
will
in?
make time. I say as my ringtone is literally Palpatine saying "Do it."
Well, yeah.
Yeah, Star
What
Wars is
about
cool.
and what any final thoughts, feeB? Anything else?
Uh, I give it 3.5 bantha fathers out of 5.
Very nice.
That's a that's another thing we should do is just review all the Star Wars like things they put in there, like what the Krark or
Uh,
it's like
We'll do
shooting
it.
Gundarks in Baker's Canyon. Oh, it's not Gundarks. It's
We'll do a tier list.
yeah. All right, that's all I
I'll do I can do an impromptu class on Mandoa.
have. That would be epic.
Well, where can we find
Whew.
you guys?
Uh, uh, Twitter at Bookkeeper Theo. Uh, okay.
They do be keeping books though. You're telling me a book kept this Theo?
Mm, more likely than you think.
I gotta check what my Twitter thingy is. I'm at feeB on VHS.
Word.
Bird up. And you can find me at PPP Kaden. Radio station, soon TM, as it's been for the last 6 months. Turns out doing pre-production is very expensive if you're poor, very time consuming.
Sad word.
But yeah, I think that's it. See us next time for Annihilation, or as I like to call it, American Stalker.
Hell yeah, I'm so fucking excited for you guys to read it. Sorry I cussed.
I've been cussing this entire time. I just realized that. I'm sorry.
I don't know if were we?
I'm trying not to curse.
Fine now.
In a lot of my recent stuff, I'm not cursing at all. But
Shit.
I'm sick right now and really tired, so I just kind of not cared. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Just stop the recording.
I'm sorry.
I gotta say